Hello. Great. Okay. All right. We are going to get started for our amazing closing panel, Money Matters, with this incredible panel here. Thank you all in advance. If you could just take your seats, we are going to start quickly so we can have some time for a bit of Q&A at the end. All right. I'll let Julie get started.
All right, we will start then. First of all, thanks for staying. We're excited to kind of dig into some of the big issues that we need to be thinking about. And I think I'll have each of you just introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, everybody. My name's Liz Scharf, and I work at Capstone Community Action in Barre, Vermont, and I'm the Director of Community Economic Development and Food Security, and I'm also an accredited financial counselor.
I'm Priscilla Gilbert. I'm Priscilla Gilbert, better? Okay, cool. I am a financial advisor, a certified financial planner, and I have a small financial planning and investment management firm, Centerpoint Financial, based in Montpelier.
We're going to jump into one of the things that probably a lot of us feel and aren't quite sure what to do. But if you think to yourself, I have not saved enough for retirement. I know it, and now what? Ladies, what do we do?
So I thought I'd start and then I'd pass it on to the person who actually helps people invest in retirement. But what I like to tell people in my role as a financial counselor is that don't go to those calculators that tell you that you need to have $2 million, right? Because you're going to say, I don't have $2 million, I'm never going to have $2 million, therefore I'm not even going to bother. A lot of that, is just a mathematical formula that assumes you're going to be living exactly the way that you've always lived, that you're always going to have 2 cars, that you're always going to have a mortgage. And so what I really tell people is, it's never too late to start saving, right? Especially if you are in your sort of the second half of your career, maybe your kids have grown up, maybe they're out of the house. Now is the time to really bang it out. And you can make up a lot of time that you may have lost when your kids were younger and when you simply just didn't have the money to invest in it. Pass it on to Scylla.
Yeah, I can't echo Liz's statement enough. We were actually on another panel together, I don't know how many years ago, and we had a third panelist, an estate planning attorney, and someone asked the question, how much do I need to retire? And she said $4 million. And I'm not sure who gasped louder, the audience or Liz and I. Definitely, there is no number. So, the number is specific to you. It is, what do you need to live on? And then essentially you need to apply some inflation and, your current age to a big number. Like you may think you're gonna live to be 80, forget that, you don't have any idea. So, plan for something huge. I plan for 97 for my clients. Most of them sort of choke at that, and I say, well, we don't want to end up with you eating cat food at the end. It's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but these are difficult discussions. So yes, it's never too late. Sometimes just starting and saying, can I save $25 a paycheck into my extra into my retirement plan at work? If you can do $25 a paycheck for 3 months, maybe I can do 50. So, and just getting started, and also looking at the things that you're spending money on, and seeing, are there things that you can cut out, that you can reduce? Do you have, a cable service and you have all these streaming services? Maybe you can reduce 1 or 2 of them. I will acknowledge that we sign up for, I don't even know what it is, Nessun or something, so New England Sports Network, so that my husband can watch the Bruins in the winter. But I refuse to pay for it year round because he only watches it for 3 months, so we sign up for 3 months, we cancel it. That kind of stuff, yeah, it's a little bit of a pain in the neck, but oh my gosh, it saves a lot.
I think one of the things that I heard somebody say was, as women, we are kidding ourselves if we think a cup of coffee is ruining our economic situation. It's not Starbucks that's ruining our economic situation. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, except that a Starbucks every day at $6 actually probably is really hurting your economic situation. You could probably pay your electricity bill if you just didn't have Starbucks every day.
But you should also be investing, right? So when you start to think about where should I be looking, investing is such a critical thing because it's like free money. Everybody always says it's free money. And even putting $25, it's like, I got to go find the person, the HR person, and fill out the forms and do the thing. And it becomes like, oh. So with investing, which can feel kind of overwhelming, is there like an easy first step? Say I just want to start throwing more money into something. Is the first step going to your HR person?
The first step is definitely going to your HR person. I'll speak first and then pass it off to Liz. So maybe with that $6 that you're spending on your Starbucks, before tax, if you didn't take it out as part of your paycheck, it would actually be $9. And $9 a day, you can multiply that out. You could put away that amount of money into your employer-sponsored retirement plan. And if your employer provides a match, maybe at 2% or at 3%. If you're not participating in that, you are leaving money on the table. So it is absolutely a pain to go to HR. We've all dealt with HR. It's exhausting. It's worth every second. And if you feel overwhelmed with the investment options, there is always, I'm not a big fan of it as an investment advisor myself, when I have clients, but the greatest default is that target date investment option that aligns with your retirement date, whether that's at 65 or 70. Don't feel overwhelmed. They are designed for you.
Yeah, I was going to echo the target date. What I like to do is choose no more than sort of 4 funds and think about, maybe I'll have 3/4 of them be stock funds, which you may look at my age and say, wait, but I thought you should have 50% bonds and 50% stocks by the time you're that age. And what I always tell people is you're not dying when you retire, right? You still have another 30 or potentially 40 years left if you live to 90, you have a good 30 years left of life. And so you want that money to grow during those 30 years as well, when you're not giving to the retirement account because you've already left the workforce. And really, it is so important to not leave that money on the table if there is a workplace option. If there isn't, there are plenty of really low cost, not no cost, but very low cost funds that you can invest in on your own. I'm not gonna, there's things like Vanguard, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price. Those are companies where they offer, very low cost funds that allow you to maximize the amount that you're putting in and saving for retirement on your own if you don't have something available to you in the workforce. And then just the last plug, if you can do Roth, definitely do Roth as your investment vehicle because you're paying the taxes now, but you won't be paying the taxes when you retire.
And just one add-on to that is that if you do not have an employer-sponsored retirement plan, your number one savings vehicle is either a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. That's just two different ways of savings. One is pre-tax, one is post-tax. We won't worry about that here, but an IRA, a lot of people think that can they fund a 401k or a 403b at work and an IRA? Yes, they're two totally different things. An IRA is an individual retirement account. So that's a good way to remember that you can always fund an IRA and an employer-sponsored plan. And if you don't have an employer-sponsored plan, then your best savings vehicle is an individual account.
And I was just going to put a plug in for, and I'm not going to be able to say the name right, Vermont is implementing the Green Mountain Savings Plan. Is that what it's called? Green Mountain Saves. Vermont Saves, which is which allows more like a restaurant, for example, or a small business, offer a retirement plan. Now they may not have a match, but it will give you a vehicle that you can take with you from job to job. So if you change, you'll always have the same account, and that's a great. So if your employer, when they start to roll this out, if your employer isn't offering this, you should encourage them to consider doing that.
So the next question is going to be about something we think about a lot here in Vermont, which is the price of housing, and will I ever be able to buy a house? Which 30 years ago, you could buy a house and then you would have this nest egg at the end. With the price of housing and the impossibility of reaching that goal, what are the things we should be thinking about if we want to own a house? Or is that not the best investment now?
Raise your hand if you want to own a house, but you don't. And keep your hand up if you're worried about how you're going to be able to afford a house. Okay, so yeah, so it's a reality that homeownership today is very different from the homeownership that I engaged in 25 years ago, 30 years ago. Not just in the price of houses in relation to, obviously there's inflation, but in relation to like what we earned and what percentage of our income goes to housing, but also in the interest rates. And I did actually a little digging just to give you a sense that this is real and it makes homeownership challenging for a lot of folks. So back in my day, when I had a less than 3% interest rate, so it was like 2.7%, which is one reason why houses aren't being sold right now, because people have 2.7% interest rates, and they don't want to give that up for a 6% interest rate. So if you were to borrow a $415,000 with a 2.7% interest rate on a 30-year loan, your monthly payment would be around $2,000 a month. That's the principal and the interest. That doesn't include the home insurance, doesn't include your property taxes. You would be paying just over $190,000 in interest over that 30 years. Today, at a 6.1% interest rate, that same $415,000 loan is nearly $500,000 in interest. So over the course of 30 years, it's a little over $900,000 versus $600,000 for, and that's just simple math of the interest rate and the terms. So when you go to your bank and you're like, all the houses are, $600,000, and I'm only earning, between my spouse and me, $90,000, you're not going to get a loan for that because it's not enough money for you to. So I think the trend that we're sort of seeing is waiting, right? It's that a lot of people are not buying their houses in their 30s anymore, or even late 20s, but more in their 40s, late 40s, sometimes even after the kids have grown up. It's still a really good investment, I think, if you can afford to keep up the house, because that's how you build your investment, and that's how you increase the value of the home. And so I am all for home ownership, because maybe in 30 years you'll sell that house for $1 million. Yes, you will have spent a lot of money too, but you have something. So don't go out and buy a house, but just be cautious that it may take longer than you are planning on.
And the only thing I would mention to tag on to what Liz said is you need to remember that there are a lot of additional costs to home ownership. So there's paying for the house, that's problem number one. Problem number two is things go wrong and there is no super. You are the super. So I generally tell clients that they need to budget about 4% a year of the value of the house for maintenance. Now, in some years, you're not going to spend that. And then the next year, your furnace is going to blow and you're going to have to replace it, or you're going to need a new roof, or any number of things. So you need to remember that there's property taxes, there's home insurance, and there's the maintenance of a home. And that is a really, really big expense. The other thing that I would say is just to remember that just because you buy a home doesn't mean it needs to be perfect right away. So that is an evolution. I will acknowledge that when my husband and I bought our house, we literally had a mattress on the floor in our bedroom and no other furniture. Actually, that's not true. We had a chair. That was it. If we had friends come over, we laid a blanket on the floor and told them to bring a cushion. I'm not joking. So just remember, it's okay for things to take time.
I think that's one of the things with HGTV and all the things that we see. We feel we want perfection, and it's just not reality. It just isn't. I want to talk about something that's really simplistic but becoming really common on places like Instagram and how we shop. But before I do, I want to know how many of you have questions so I have an idea of when I should be stopping. Okay, so we do have few. Okay, and then I'll just come down and let you ask the rest of the questions. My last question is, you know when you're on Instagram and you go to find something and you're like, ooh, I want that, and you go to buy it and you can pay 4 installments for it? Tell us about your thoughts on that.
Which one of us is going to be less aggressive in our negative response?
Please, be honest. I think we all need honesty here. That's what's going to put us in an economic position that we want to be in a power position.
So if you're going to have debt, remember that you need to have an asset against it, except for student loans where your brain is the asset, and that's a really challenging one, but that is a reality.
That's a different panel.
That's a different panel, exactly. It's gotten even more complicated after the OBBBA, the Beautiful Bill Act. But anyway, different panel. So you want to have an asset against it. If you have a car loan, you need to have a car, right? And the car needs to be valued for more than your loan. If you are going to have a mortgage, you need to have a house. If you're going to eat dinner delivered by DoorDash, you're going to eat that dinner and it will be gone. So do not pay for that dinner that you ate in one evening over the next month. That makes no sense. Do not buy that pair of jeans, as cute as they are, because you cannot return them after you have worn them for a month. So I cannot say enough. I have 2 teenage kids, and when they talk to me about how their friends are financing meals or clothing, if my own children did it, I don't know, it would be a really ugly situation. But just a reminder, that's you need to have an asset against debt.
Yeah, and I think this also just leads into the whole budgeting piece of our lives, right? And that it's super important. I keep like a spreadsheet, right? And it literally is every single thing that I spend money on in a month, but also in a year, right? So it's also the 3 cords of firewood that we buy. It's the, house insurance. It's that kind of thing. And being able to really see on paper, like, what's the money in And that's the money in after my retirement and my health insurance, right? Like that money that's left over after taxes and everything. That's the money that's available for me to use. And where's the money going out? And then I look at it and I'm like, oh, what's changed, right? Oh yeah, we're not renting the Trumpet anymore. Well, that's great, I can take that off, but now what's been added to it, right? So I think it's, you know, I really do sort of get back to that wants versus needs. And, you know, something like a purse is a want and it is an expense, and then it becomes a debt if you put it on your credit card and you can't pay your credit card off every month, right? We don't want the purses and the shoes, as much as we love them, to become actual, you know, 21% interest rate debts. And I'm not entirely against and I want to say this, like, you know, if you need a new couch and they're like, you can get it in 6 months with 0 interest, and you're able to do that and you pay it off by the end of the 6 months or before the end of the 6 months, I think that's great. I think that's a great way to be able to do it, because you may not be able to afford that couch all at once. What you don't want to do is forget that last payment and then they charge you the 22% interest for the entire 6 months. Those are the things that you really have to pay attention if you're doing that, and the onus is on you to really keep up with where you're doing that kind of borrowing.
All right, let's get questions in. Who has questions?
Okay, you said you didn't want to talk about financial aid, but it's part of where I am right now in my age. So my husband and I lived in Boston, did really well, and we decided to move to Vermont to raise our children. And we knew we could pay off their college before they went to college, but coming to Vermont, I opened a franchise, which basically earned no money. I'm working for the franchisor. My husband works, but we took a big pay cut. So our children both go to expensive schools, as they chose, because we made enough and don't get financial aid, but they have a lot of debt. And my husband wants to take a home equity against our house to help pay off. And we're at one of those low numbers, low interest rates. And I'm not for that, so I would love to get your feedback, as I'm in my late 50s and have not contributed for the past 15 plus years, and I don't want to be paying my mortgage when I'm 85.
Yeah, I think Scylla and I are probably going to be on the same page about this. So first of all, we did acknowledge that there have been a lot of changes right now to the student loan repayment programs, and so definitely, are your kids still in college? Okay, so when they get out of college, you know, they're going to need to see like what payment plans are available to them, and there are still payment plans that are available for, like, if you're working in, you know, the public sector, where you can have, you know, your loans forgiven after a certain amount of time. And there are still, you know, income-based repayment plans. So I always caution people to take care of themselves first. It's like, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and you're not getting any younger, right? They have the rest of their lives to be working on the, you know, paying back their student loans. If you find yourself in a position years from now where you can help them, by all means help them. But I would really caution against taking out a loan on your house to pay off the student loans. Because the other thing too is your kid could become disabled. Let's hope they don't, but, like, you know, there might be a forgiveness that happens that you can't do once you've paid off that loan. I'll let Scylla comment.
My other question would be, did you take out the loans or did your kids take out the loans?
So there's a combo of it.
Okay.
But we're trying to put it more in our children's than, well, that, you answer that.
I fully agree with everything that Liz just said, and your approach to put it more on your children. Also to remember that as a result of this one big beautiful bill, the PLUS loans have until June 1st or June 30th of 2026 to be consolidated. So that includes the loans that you've taken out, even if they haven't started repayment. And you have to determine, you're going to have one of two options, either an income adjusted payment or just a structured payment. Sounds like income wise you're going to be in a structured payment, but you have to do that conversion before 2026 or you have no options. June of 2026.
I was just going to add that you can probably go to Representative Ballant did a webinar about all the changes to the student loans. If you go to her website, she probably has that up. And it was a really comprehensive overview of all the changes that have happened. It was like a Zoom webinar.
I had to write it down also. There is an amazing government loan simulator at studentaid.gov/loan-simulator. And that's great for using if you're taking out loans and figuring out how you want to take out the loans, or if you're figuring out how you want to consolidate or reclassify your loans prior to the cutoffs.
Any other questions?
I'm curious what you think about some of those life insurance vehicles that people might be investing in that are supposed to pay you annually, or I'm not even sure what they are, but thoughts?
I think that there is a great value in, and this is my personal opinion as a financial advisor, I think that there is great value in term life insurance policies. So that is life insurance policies that are for a set number of years. And I would generally say that that's the number of years it takes for you to get your kids through college, the number of years it takes for you to pay off your mortgage. That's generally the time period that you want. I personally am not a big fan of whole life insurance policies. They're much more expensive to maintain, and they don't grow as fast as if you invested the same premium that you would have paid. So let's say you're going to have a premium of $2,000 on a whole life insurance policy of $500,000, or you're going to have a premium of $500 on a term life insurance policy for 20 years of $500,000. If you took that $1,500 and invested it in your retirement plan, you'd be way further ahead at the end. The other challenge for some people, an annuity is just the right thing. That's with the life insurance policy that pays you income. For some people, it is just the right thing. And that's generally in a situation where you have a limited asset, a very fixed asset, and probably not enough money for your future cash needs. But, and so locking in a guaranteed income can be really helpful. For most people, annuities are actually kind of risky because let's say that you have a health need. Well, if you have a major health need, you cannot access that. You get your $1,000 a month or your $2,000 a month. You can't suddenly get $10,000 to put in a chairlift in your house. So then you're putting that on a credit card and you're paying 21% interest, and so I think there are very specific circumstances where life insurance policies into annuities are a great fit, but I think you want to be really careful because you need to remember that by getting a guarantee, you are losing your flexibility.
Next question.
In your opinions, at what point is it worth it to pay to have a financial advisor? At what dollar amount of investments do you think, to pay the percentage to get the advice?
Go ahead, Nella.
Okay. Financial advisors work in two ways. Some financial advisors work on an hourly basis, and other advisors work on an assets under management, and they do financial planning. It's hard. I do most of the latter, but when I talk to people who are 25 years old and they call me up and they say, or 50 years old and they say, I just need a plan because I need to know how to get started, I generally tell them not to pay me to manage their investments because I'm too expensive for their needs. And I should charge them for like 6 hours of work, and I should give them a plan and they should go do it. And there is no amount of assets and there is no age at which you should not do that.
Yeah, and I would say too, it is there. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a dollar limit, but I think, you know, here we are, a bunch of powerful women, right? I think that we do have the capacity to learn, right? It can be handy, especially if you're like, I'm not someone who has any idea what I'm doing. I don't want to do this. I don't like thinking about it. I'm just going to, you know, work with this person over here and have them, you know, help me. You know, there's a bit of luxury associated with that. And if you're just a young person working, or you're just still working, use your free workplace person. They'll help you, right? They'll meet with you, and there's no cost to that. And definitely do that and just do a check-in, and they'll say, well, do you know, and I have another workplace, you know, that I put over in Vanguard. They'll be like, okay, you know, I'll factor that in and we'll take a look and see how you're doing. So I don't think it's necessary, but I do think that it's important as women that we do understand, you know, have some basic understanding of, you know, funds and the fees associated with them, and that we trust ourselves to be able to figure it out and to ask people who may know more about it, but not necessarily have to hire someone to help you.
Hi, thank you so much for this. We're learning a lot, so thank you. My question is, do you have any advice for someone who wants to buy a house but wants to use it as an asset instead of a liability, so wants to rent part of it or Airbnb part of it? Any advice on that?
Sure. So as long as you have a mortgage on, so if you're borrowing to buy this house, it's definitely an asset, but the bank owns it essentially, right? And so if you're looking at it as a rental income, just be you know, aware that and I'm not going to give any tax advice, obviously, but you know, there's tax implications to that. There could be interest rate implications to it. There's definitely potentially different property taxes that you might pay depending on the town you live in. And, you know, it is a way of diversifying your investments, right? So a lot of people, all they may have is just retirement and maybe a little bit of money in savings. Real estate is not a bad way to diversify where your money is. It's, you know, it's not all in the stock market. It's also in your real estate. But also, you know, keep in mind that it depends on where you are, right? And, you know, at this point, it seems like no matter where you are, houses are appreciating. And so understanding that right now the market's really high, right? And you're buying at top dollar plus high interest rates. And so those two factors, as I mentioned earlier, are pieces to your investment, you know, portfolio.
So just to give the math side of that, you want to look at what all of your expenses and make sure that the rental income is going to cover your expenses plus the income that you're trying to get out of it. And that income is more than you could earn with that money otherwise. So, you know, more than you could earn by investing it in your retirement plan at work or elsewhere. And so the expenses that you want to look at is the mortgage and the interest, the property taxes, the maintenance. And so I said a 4% number. On rental properties, I prefer to use a 5.5% to 6% number because you're fixing things that the tenant finds are a problem, which you as a homeowner might not find to be a problem. You may not mind jiggling the toilet handle, your tenant will. So you also need to look at utilities. You need to look at whether or not you're going to need to have a property manager, and that's, could be an additional 10% cost. So rental properties are great, but they rarely turn a profit right away.
We have another question.
So many of us have partners either in business or partners in life that we have to make financial decisions with. Do you have advice like working through, besides the traditional like, oh, what are your goals? And is this aligned with your goal? Like when there may be conflict, working through like those financial decisions about, oh, invest more in the business or do something for employee, different decisions come both in our personal lives with money and our businesses with money. So like any recommendations for working through those decisions with others in partnership and sometimes when there's conflict?
We've both been married a long time.
Yeah, right. We've both been married a really long time. I'll give a personal story of where I failed.
Me too.
At that one. Okay.
I love the failure story.
Oh, God. So, probably 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know how long ago, my husband and I decided that we wanted to look at solar panels and, life. We never got around to it. I had somebody from Catamount Solar come out to our house, give us a quote. Then we got into a lack of agreement about whether the solar panels should be ground mounted or on the roof. We decided that we weren't going to have a massive dissolution of our marriage because we couldn't figure this one out, so we kicked that can down the road. And here we are in September of 2025, when the tax credits will expire in 3 months, once again discussing our absolute desire to have solar panels, knowing that we have completely, in our attempt to avoid conflict, completely missed the 30% tax deduction window. That hurts.
Yeah, and I think it really does boil down to communication and frequent communication, right? So it's something that we sit down and we'll look at our budget every maybe 6 months or something and just be like, okay, are we how is this looking? Are we am I really spending only $800 on food? Oops, no, actually we're spending more, right? Because food prices have gone up, and so really. Making sure that, and I do that by literally looking at my bank statements and credit card statements and putting them in a spreadsheet and saying, how much did I spend on food? Oh, dear God, right? It was a lot, right? And I think my oops moment was, I don't remember if we were married or not, but I think we were, because I came home from work and I said to my husband, I bought us a car. And he was like, what? And he was like, okay, he knew we needed one, and we hadn't really said that I was going to go out and buy one, but this was a brand new car. And he said, I had to give him credit. He said, next time maybe we should have a conversation about that. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. I probably should have. And ever since then, I mean, this is 30 years later, any kind of big purchase or anything that's pretty, significant, we talk about it and we just say, is this something that we need? And sometimes it's annoying, right? Sometimes it's really no, but I really want that, right? And he'll be like, no, we really don't need that. So I think, and you were also sort of talking about the business, that piece around, because that can get a little dicey too, sort of the business money and paying yourself and all of that. I'm not a business expert, but I mean, it definitely boils down to understanding that you may disagree and you may not always get what you want, but compromises is key to being successful in the financial part of your partnership.
And I would just tack on establishing values, whether in a business or a personal relationship. I do the same thing as Liz in tracking expenses, and I keep 5 years in those categories on a spreadsheet. And I like to look back and say, all right, so we spent X more in this category, why? Maybe we bought a new car, maybe something else. Was that worth it? So we spent X more in our travel budget. Was that worth it? We spent X more in our recreation budget. Was that worth it? Sometimes it is, and sometimes that's a great way to agree, and sometimes you need to look at things a little bit differently. And that can go on either side of the equation. It's always easier when you're the person in the right, but that doesn't always happen.
I have a question that might be of interest to the person with the rental idea. So I have a place, I have 2 homes, and the home I have in another state will eventually be our retirement home that I rent out for about 2 months a year to pay for the taxes, managed by a brother-in-law that's nearby, and that works since he wants extra income. But what I'm trying to figure out is when the time comes for us to move and we have to sell our home here, what's going to happen with the cost of that home? Do I do a HELOC loan and make investments in the other property? How do I reduce the financial burden when I sell that? Will that be a problem as far as the cost of me selling the home, the capital gains?
And the home that is a rental property right now, you will live in as your permanent home?
That will become my permanent home.
Okay, and then you will sell that home at some point? That's what you're trying to figure out?
No, I'm going to be selling the home that I have here that I've been in for the last 25 years plus.
Okay.
And we'll move into that other home that's the rental property as my retirement home.
So are you married? Okay, you have a $500,000 exemption on capital gains between what you have paid for your house and including your cost basis, what you paid for the house, and anything that you've put into it to improve the house. That's not painting, that's not replacing appliances, that is including solar. And any kind of renovations like additions or something like that. But you have a $500,000 exemption. So if your home has not appreciated more than $500,000 over what you've put into it, you will not owe capital gains. If you live in that rental property that you will make your primary residence, as long as you live in that home for 2 years as your primary residence, then it becomes your primary residence and you get the same $500,000 capital gains exemption. Did that answer your question?
I was going to say, I just want to thank you for mentioning the buy now, pay later. I'm going to call it a scheme because honestly, it does get towards the young people. Because I remember growing up, when I got my first credit card, it was like establishing a good credit score and how much of an emphasis it is. And it's my understanding that the buy now, pay later is that it will count towards, if you're not payment, it counts towards your credit score. I think in the last year, that's what's come about. But I guess now thinking about raising young people now and that temptation when they want to buy something, how do we educate them now with these extra tools about managing their credit score or something like that, and how important? Because I think we don't talk about it often.
Well, being an example is one of the first steps, right? And I think also communicating with your kids. A lot of people don't communicate with their family members about money. I am extremely transparent with my kids about the money we have, about their money, about advice that I'm going to give to them about money, so that they understand. And they always have, right? So that they're not like, how come that kid gets that and we don't, right? It's like, having those, so being honest, I think is good. And even if you don't have the money, right, to say, well, we don't have the money to buy this, and I don't want to take a loan out, for example. I will say too that in terms of like building credit, and this may have changed, I haven't looked it up recently, but a lot of places like, say for example, PayPal credit, they don't report that on your credit report. So you're not actually building credit with those kinds of credit products that are out there. But what they will do is mark you on your credit if you aren't paying it back, right? So it's kind of like it doesn't help you, but it can hurt you. And doing things like, if you've got a young person, having them understand, like, and I have to say, it was hard. My kids are now in their 20s, but they couldn't get a credit card without me co-signing, right? And, I always say co-sign with reservation. Understand that it could be your credit, and I have to have trust in my children to be able to pay their loans off. Even a car loan, they hadn't worked long enough to be able to. How do kids that don't have that parent who has good credit, who's able to help co-sign on that, how do the kids get their first car to be able to go to work? And it's a terrible reality. But now they're self-sufficient. Now they have their own credit. Now they don't need me to co-sign. But I think credit, for better or for worse, and if you attended that class, they probably talked about that today. It's a necessity. It's not everyone has to have credit, but it certainly helps a lot. If you're renting an apartment, right? If you're getting a job, even, your credit is used. Car insurance, right? Your car insurance will be higher if you don't have good credit. Why? Because if you don't have good credit, you're at risk of getting in an accident. That's just the algorithm behind people, with bad credit. They get into car accidents more often, right? So those are things that are just the reality of living in today's day and age. And I'm sorry if you've gotten in a car accident and you have good credit, because that happens too.
I agree with Liz. There's a lot of talk right now about helping your kids to build their credit by putting them on your credit card or co-signing a credit card with them. And I just want to echo what Liz said. It puts you at a huge risk. My kids they're 19, they've both come to me and said, hey, my friends all have credit cards. I only have a debit card. My friends all have credit cards that their parents signed with them, and it helps them build their credit. And I said, I love you so very much, but there's no chance that I am letting you potentially expose my credit that I've been building for the last X number of years, let's not worry about it, to you charging something up at wherever they want to shop or some trip that they're taking. I built my credit, Liz built her credit, we've all built credit, and I'm a little bit of an advocate of saying that if your credit isn't very high as a young person, you can't get as high of a credit limit when you do take out that credit card, and that's okay. I will also say it is tough. When I started my business, I could get I had to be in business for a year before I could get a credit card. Before that, I had a debit card. And my first credit card with my business after a year had a $1,000 credit limit. So it takes time. It's painful.
We have time for one more question, and then if you would please just stay for a minute. There are just a couple of announcements. We would be so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for this insightful panel. A lot that I learned here today. So you both mentioned individually that you are managing your budget through spreadsheets, weekly, monthly, and over the 5 years period of time. But I understand that's a lot of domestic admin work, right? That we are leading. Do you have any tools, technology that you use that automates that? Because I'm not trying to gender stereotype here, but that's a lot of mental invisible load.
Yes, I know. So the spreadsheet is actually just a way of, it is kind of old-fashioned, but it is a way to really, because I've used apps a lot. Like I used Mint for a long time before then they stopped, and now I use Empower, I think it's called. they just don't do a great job of really drilling down to what you're spending money on. Like, you have to go in and say, actually, Guy's Farm and Yard is not a restaurant, it's where I buy my pet food, right? And so then I have to, train it to say that it's pet food. They're probably getting better at stuff like that. But it's not like I'm looking at my spreadsheet every day. Don't get me wrong. I make it sound like I'm this really great budgeter. It really is more for me to be able to just literally see it on paper, right? Because on the apps, you're just getting these charts and things like that, and you're like, oh, my bank tells me that I overspent by like $9,000. I'm like, what does that even mean? I didn't spend that. Like, where is this coming from? So, like, I think that those, there's a place for apps for sure, for budgeting. I think, are there other ones that people use, like, you need a budget? Yeah, YNAB, you need a budget. Yeah, that's a good one. Kind of assigns a chore for every dollar that you have. Rocket Money, yep. I guess they're good at getting rid of all your streaming services, right? Figuring out where you're spending all your money on streaming services that you forgot. And I will just put another plug in too for budgeting, and because like the Women's Fund is helping sponsor this, is that giving to charity, if you can afford to give money to charity, I always recommend that people put it out as a monthly expense and actually have it get taken out every month, because giving $10 a month is a lot easier than giving $120 in December, right? When you're like, oh, everybody's asking for money, and guess what? It's Christmas. I don't have any more money, right? And just having it become automatic and checking in every now and then, right, to make sure, like, is this the right amount? Do I still want to give to this charity? It's a hassle a little bit to set all that up, but I think once you do it, I think you end up giving more when you do it, and the charities rely on that and know that that's an income that they're getting every month.
You exposed my great weakness, which is I am really good at managing other people's budgets and spending a lot of time doing administrative tasks for other people, and I'm terrible about doing it myself. So I cannot say that it is a lot of administrative time, because I do it once a year. And I know it's shameful. I'm not recommending that to anybody else, but honestly, I get it done. So maybe once a year is doable. I take my checking account and my credit card, and I kind of choose a rainy, terrible weekend, like maybe in January, because there always are some, and I just sit down and I go through the expenses and I classify them, and I keep tabs on that spreadsheet so I can see how I classified the ski pass last year and make it the same this year. Yeah, it takes a weekend, but you don't have to do it like once a week. That's just not realistic. You need to make dinner.
Yes. Thank you both so much. Like, real world, awesome help. Appreciate you so much. And I think if you just don't mind waiting a second.
Sure. So this announcement is really an invitation. Hi, I'm Sarah. I work with the Vermont Women's Fund, and I think we have a special invitation slide to put up here. So this invitation, all of you here, all of this energy that you have, clearly this has been worthwhile for you. Am I right? Yes? Can I get some? Yes, there we go. So this is an invitation for you to keep this energy going, okay? And come to the Women's Fund annual celebration on Tuesday. We're going to be in Burlington. The party starts at 4:30. When we open the doors, we're going to have hors d'oeuvres, and there's a cash bar. You can mix and mingle. And you're going to hear from the incomparable Reshma Saujani, who founded Girls Who Code and Moms First. She's really pushing the envelope on how we think about women's roles in business, in the home, in our communities. And you can rock out to Myra Flynn at the same time. So I invite you, turn to your WEOC bestie, right? This morning we talked about making connections. Turn to your WEOC bestie. If you don't have a WEOC bestie, make one while you get some ice cream, and make a plan to continue your connections and come with us. And if you use that code VWFFriend50, you get half off your ticket price, so it'll only be $25. If that's a barrier for you, please come see me and I will give you a free ticket. So thank you so much. And before I turn over the mic, because I have the mic, I'm going to say if we could give a round of applause for Hannah, who is scooping already, Liz, who's in the background, and Fauna, who has been our leader for the REOP committee. We really would not be here without Fauna's leadership. So thank you so much, and thank all of you, and here's Fauna.
Just very quickly, because I'm between you and the ice cream here, we will be sending out an evaluation early next week, so please look for that in your inboxes. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for coming. Please enjoy and meet yourselves and greet yourselves. And thanks to our amazing panel, to Julie. This was so fun. Thank you all so much for coming. You guys were so fun. So fun.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Solid.
You guys, that was great.
Good. Thank you.